in Spanish and or Portuguese. So.
Mientras tiembla la tierra.
Yeah. So this, yeah. So and now we do it in the same way. Then the Picada did it very well the first time. So I will tell you when you have in 5 minutes when you have to finish. And I have to tell you also what I already mentioned, that that Maria Gabriela Lugones is not coming, not even online. She is participating. So for the last 15 minutes, we can reserve for a very short kind of wrapping up and develop a new ideas discussion. And we do it in the same way as we did it also in the last round, because it's very unpolite to present people in a short way. So, and when I present my dear colleagues from Latin America, I should tell all the publications and all the CVs, but we don't have time. So what we decided is they have to do their presentations, and they do it just in one sentence. So let's start with Nelson.
Perfectly. Thank you very much, Dorothea. Thank you very much to everyone here. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks to Fernando, all colleagues here. I was trained like a social worker, but I made my PhD in sustainability in Barcelona Tech. And I am in the field of history of technology. My contribution to the project of the corridor of Capricornio is about infrastructure of the future and ruins of the present, images of the invisible techno-territory, transects of biocenic corridor Brazil-Chile. I am here thanks mostly to the project of the Agency of Research in Chile, FONDECIT. Then let's start. Good afternoon here, good morning in Latin America, good evening in other places. I want to begin with a paradox that defines much of Latin American modernity. Our territories are full of infrastructure of the future, projects designed to integrate, accelerate, and modernize the continent. Yet we will amid their ruins, the remains of interrupted promises and exhausted landscapes. Today, I will speak about what I call the invisible techno-territory, the interwoven technological, environmental, and economic forces that shape Latin America's present through corridor of extraction, energy, and imagination. It's not working. I guess one of these. But this happened, but no worries.
Try it now.
Okay.
Kannst du noch mal kurz kommen, Sarah? Der Klicker funktioniert nicht.
Maybe.
Is it on?
I don't know.
No, there's
Yes, but
I think there's only three to switch it on.
Work at the moment. Try again, please.
Try again. If not, I can continue. This the images are only illustrated, and no worries.
Yeah, now it's working.
Thank you very much. No, yeah, it's not the stick, but well, thank you. I will speak about what I call the invisible techno-territory, the interwoven technological, environmental, and economic forces that shape Latin America's present through corridors of extraction, energy, and imagination. My focus is the Capricornio or Bioceanic Corridor, which connects the Atlantic port of Santos, Brazil, with the northern Chilean Pacific, Antofagasta and Mejillones, through Paraguay and northwest Argentina. It is both an engineering project and a metaphor of regions' enduring tensions between progress and depletion. The invisible techno-territory. The idea of techno-territory emerged from my ongoing research on solar energy and infrastructure history in northern Chile. The Atacama Desert, where the Capricornio Corridor reacts the Pacific has long been a site of technological experimentation, from the solar desalination industry as Las Salinas in 1872, Sierra Gorda 1883, Tomeco 1907, to the industrial solar ponds in half of 20th century for potassium, with their trajectory to the lithium harvest since the last quarter of the past century. Each of these projects sought to materialize a better future, clean energy, prosperity, continental integration, while generating new forms of invisibility, displaced communities, depleted aquifers, and landscape of dust and silence. By naming it invisible, I refer to hidden dimensions of infrastructure, not only of the cables and pipelines beneath the surface, but also the social and ecological networks that sustain technological ambition. Slide over slide of maps accumulated for ages and for us for centuries. The visible territory is both material and symbolic, a field where power, knowledge, and imagination converge, connecting the biosphere, the noosphere, and the technosphere. This is a techno-environmental economic history. To understand the Capricornio Corridor, we must approach it as a techno-environmental economic history. The road intersects multiple temporalities: the industrial past of nitrate and copper extraction, the energy present of solar and lithium production, and the projected future of interoceanic logistics and global trade. Each circle has transformed the landscape into a resource to be connected and consumed. The result is a palimpsest of infrastructures, layers of ambition and abandonment, of modernity and decay. In this sense, the corridor can be conceived as an hyper-object, following Timothy Morton, as a phenomenon so vast in space and time that it transcends perception. Its impacts, social, ecological, and atmospheric, are distributed, non-linear, and enduring. To study it requires a transdisciplinary lens capable to link engineering with anthropology and ecology with historical imagination. We are speaking to use a transect of cartography. Transects as the method of the visible. In our recent work with researchers from different disciplines that presented by Fernando before, we employed a transect as a method of inquiry. A transect, borrowed from the environmental fieldwork, is both a scientific and an interpretive gesture, a cross-section cut through a landscape to reveal the strata of life, matter, and meaning. By walking, photographing, and recording along the projected route of the corridor from Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, through Iguazu and Itaipu Dam to the Atacama and Antofagasta coast, we trace how visible infrastructures emerge in unexpected forms. Dust storm that followed tracks, animal tracks interrupted by new highways, abandoned mining camps repurposed by informal workers. These transects produce images of invisible territories, not the spectacular panoramas of promotional brochures, but subtle records that expose the corridor's ecological and social undercurrents. Those are infrastructure of the future, ruins of the present. In Latin America, every infrastructural project carries the seeds of its ruin. The railway lines that once connected mining enclaves, the hydroelectric dams that promised energy sovereignty, all now stand as monuments to unfinished modernity, or, in words of Julia Thomas, a modernity of intersected scales. The Capricornio Corridor continues this lineage, conceived as an engine of integration. It simultaneously reproduces extractive patterns inherited from the colonial and developmentalist past. Its construction and environmental footprint already generate new premature ruins, degraded ripe beds, fragmented ecosystems, and displaced livelihoods. These ruins remind us that development is not linear trajectory, but a cyclical process of construction, exhaustion, and abandonment. Each phase of acceleration leaves behind material and social debris that future generations must inhabit and reinterpret as us. This is the memory and the post-extractive imagination. If the corridor is an hyper object of extraction, it can also become an hyper object of memory. Across northern Chile, we find modern ruins, deserted nitrate officinas, collapsed railways, and no obsolete solar prototypes. These sites are not only remnants of technology, but archives of experience, preserving the contradictions of modernity and traces of its workers, engineers, and inhabitants. A post-extractive imagination begins here. It proposes infrastructures of relation rather than domination, corridors of knowledge, carved and coexistence between humans, machines, and the environment. It means transforming the corridor from a logistical artery into a space of dialogue where history and ecology co-evolve and where the future is designed with rather than against time. We need other tools to get access to this phenomenon. This is the reason for speak about toward an interdisciplinary framework. Such rethinking requires an integrated approach across the science, art, and humanities without privileging any single discipline. We must ask, who do infrastructure embody and conceive power? What memories and affects survive within their ruins? And how might design policy and research collaborate to envision more ethical and ecological forms of connection? The Invisible Techno Territory project seeks precisely this, to bridge archives, maps, and fieldwork into a platform that connects historical depth with territorial sensitivity and public policy. Finally, for open ways to research and learn. The Capricornio Bioceanic Corridor is more than a road from Santos to Antofagasta, Rio de Janeiro to Chiclayo. It's a mirror of Latin America's unresolved dialogue between progress and dependency, imagination, and exhaustion. By examining it through the lens of infrastructures of the future and ruins of the present, we can perceive the corridor not only as a geopolitical strategy, but as a living landscape of memory. Scholarly transects allow us to see through the techno-territory to perceive its hidden energies, its slow violence, and its potential for renewal. Within the debris of modernity, we can still find the blueprints for alternative infrastructure, those rooted in reciprocity, remembrance, and collective transformation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for being super in time.
It's my life.
Fantastic illustration. Thank you for presenting. And
yes, thank you.
Sorry, do you think you have to do that for the next presentation too?
Well, it was kind of set in an automatic mode. I couldn't interrupt. I'm sorry.
No, it was perfect. Thank you very much. You solved all the problem.
Okay. So Louise, would you continue and with your presentation and
Yes,
a short,
the presentation.
some short introduction of yourself?
Okay. Okay. So I'd like to thank. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I guess we have. Maybe the city is working now. Okay.
But it was not the first image. I don't know. First one.
We are working for you. Be patient.
Where's the
There is a problem with the.
Because I video? Right? Here. Okay.
Working. Yes. So.
To get back. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank Fernando Rezende, Dorothée Kimmich, and the Baden-Württemberg Center for Brazil and Latin America. And I'd like also to thank the Universidade do Estado de Minas Gerais, Escola Guignard, where I work. It's a school of art. I'm Louise Gans, architect and artist, interested in the production of space in mineral and plantation territories in the contemporaneity in relation with history. My speech is titled Seen from Above, the Straight Line in the Space of Mineral Scene and in the Plantation Scene. I took this photograph from the airplane during a flight from São Paulo to Santiago, Chile, on June 2024, when flying over the Iguaçu River in Brazil, where a bridge is under construction connecting Brazil to Paraguay as part of the road planned to be the Bioceanic Corridor route. The experience of the Sinuous River, taken here as an expression of environmental richness and diversity and organic production of space, contrasts profoundly with that of industrial railways and highways. Researching the Bioceanic Corridor route through Google Earth, news sites, social networks, local newspapers, and government portals, we can notice divergences in these precarious sources, different routes, different countries, and various modes of transport. Despite this, one aspect remained: the continuity of a project model based on linear plans, monocultures, and extractivisms, direct heirs of the plantation and mining logic. Beyond the photograph taken by airplane, the accessible aerial view tools, Google Earth and Google Street View, interest me for allowing travel through spaces on a continental and planetary scale, and to understand global networks and the ways in which territory is continuously penetrated and reconfigured by capitalism. According to the architect A.O. Weisman, in Before and After Documenting the Architecture of Disaster, satellite vision technologies have provoked a radical change in our capacity to use the space domain as a political, military, and human rights point of reference. Although satellite photographs are generally presented as neutral visions, from nowhere, they are highly political products, consequence of Cold War era surveillance technologies and other state logics. They are tools used by both military forces and human rights organizations. I present here some satellite images made in a randomic way, having the route as a starting point in regions of Chile and Brazil, marked by extreme mineral extraction and agribusiness expansion. In many of these routes, I also traveled through the territory by car or by train. The regions are strategically connected by railways, highways, or pipelines, lines that connect extraction areas to ports. With this visual and narrative essay, I try to articulate data and perceptions about these territories, exploring how space is produced. So part 1, Antofagasta. On July 2, we rented a pickup truck starting from Antofagasta, already with a destination, a short trip to San Pedro de Atacama, round trip on the same day. We left the port of Antofagasta at 6 in the morning, following the Ruta del Cobre and then the Ruta 25, which is already part of the projected route of the future Bioceanic Corridor. Soon we encountered the sand and white dust that months before I had observed through the satellite view. It was as if I was making a flight from aerial views along the route to the land journey, where almost nothing of what I knew from above was visible on the ground. The only element that made it possible to recognize places were the signposts with their names. The largest lithium deposits are located in underground salt lakes in Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile. In the Salar del Carmen, the brine is pumped from underground into enormous basins, where it evaporates in the sun for up to 2 years. Exported to China by ship, the lithium is refined, processed, and transformed into battery cells. Matos Blancos, the open pit copper mine, is 10 kilometer length. Chile is the world's largest copper producer. Capstone Copper Corporation shares are listed on the Toronto and Australia Stock Exchange and the over-the-counter market. In front of the mine stands the Tropic of Capricorn Monument, a reference to the parallel that crosses the site. Here in the Chilean desert, the Chile Exploration Company Monument is a marker of territorial and mineral domination. Immediately, the Transamazonica Monument comes to my mind, a cut tree trunk, symbol of forest extermination. During the journey, the railway line, the ore pipeline, electrical transmission lines, wind and solar energy towers run parallel to the highway. Trucks loaded with lithium cross us on the Ruta 25. The route is punctuated by tire deposits, workshops, platforms, and all the infrastructure supporting transport operations. The Antofagasta region, today the epicenter of Chilean mineral exports, was in the 19th and early 20th centuries dominated by saltpeter production, used in fertilizers and gunpowder. The industrial installations, known as oficinas salitreras, were controlled especially by British capital and employed workers in conditions of extreme isolation in the desert. We stopped at the ruins of Pampa Union, a town that had a brief life between 1911 and 1930, created as a sanatorium for the sick and injured from nearby saltpeter mines. A few kilometers earlier, we passed through Chacabuco, a former saltpeter station and workers' housing. After the 1973 military coup, Pinochet's regime transformed the site into a concentration camp for about 2,000 political prisoners. Other copper mines appear on my randomic satellite journey, but guided by the route. Sierra Gorda, Spence, and Chuquicamata. The old town of Chuquicamata was deactivated and its inhabitants relocated to Calama due to environment impacts and mine expansion. The desert flower is a rare phenomenon in Atacama, when dormant seeds and bulbs bloom after sparse rains, creating an impressive colored layer with more than 200 species. This ephemeral explosion of life occurs in one of the most arid places with the highest solar radiation on the planet. From the viewpoint called Flor del Desierto, one can see Cerro Dominador, a solar thermal plant. The location of these projects in areas near cities and agricultural lands produces energy not for the local population, but for mining operations. The invasion of territory is marked by solar panels, plants, and transmission lines. Along Route 385, we continue to tour SKM Salar. Lithium extractivism designs these territories. From above, the desert seems like a geometric abstraction, colored tanks, limes, and blocks. Up close, it is pulverized, silent, and toxic matter. Visualization technologies are themselves power devices. The orbital gaze transforms territory into measurable surface into data. What all these mines, ruins, and solar plants have in common is the principle that Uruguayan biologist Eduardo Godinas calls efectos derrame, the spillover effects of extractivism. According to the author, the push for extractivism has consequences for the rest of the country, such as changes in public policies, in the functioning of the economy, in the understanding of justice and democracy, or in the conceptions about nature. These effects transcend the physical location of mines, extending like political, economic, and symbolic waves that shape the entire territory. Part 2, Carajás and Matopiba. In August 2025, I've been in Maranhão state in North Brazil. We boarded the passenger train operated by Vale SA, which runs along the Carajás Railway and a 900-kilometer railway connecting Carajás mines to the port. Açailândia is a nodal point where meet the Carajás Railway and the Norte-Sul Railway. This one heads into the interior of the Cerrado biome, linking agro-export centers and connecting with the future bioceanic corridor in the future. Despite being distinct, both operate within the same rationality, the conversion of territory into logistical infrastructure oriented by the global circulation of commodities. Carajás. This is Carajás. The debate about the new geological eras of capital has expanded beyond the generic notion of Anthropocene, proposing terms that evidence the historical, colonial, and material dimensions of the planetary crisis. The mineral Ocene is a concept that designates the era in which mineral extractivism becomes the structuring force of the global economy and territorial organization. It shows how the subsoil, understood as resource, becomes the field of geopolitical dispute and capital reproduction, prolonging the colonial logics of plunder and dependence. A project model based on linear plans and logistic infrastructure, railways, export corridors, and sacrifice zones as the Carajás mine, an extractive project that has a name, Vale SA. The Carajás Railway and the 222 road run through the Mãe Maria indigenous land. The rail and the road project was designed to transport the extracted ore, passing directly through the indigenous area. These lines are not just passageways, but geometric forms of power that reconfigure territory and daily time with the intention of disrupting lifestyles. Fishbone. The reconfiguring pattern of fishbone deforestation is typical of road penetration into the forest. Each opened road creates a gradient of degradation that extends in lateral ramifications, converting. Okay, I had another image, but okay. Each opened road is it okay? Oh, it stopped the image. Huh?
Stop sharing?
No, yes, it's temporary. There is no image anymore. Ah, no. Okay. Finish? I didn't finish, but okay.
Yeah, do you want to finish your paper?
Okay. No, well, I was speaking about this one.
No more images in there.
Okay.
Should I share what we
No, okay. So I just wanted to finish. I would show some images from Matopiba, the Brazil's new agriculture frontier. But I would like to finish with the plantation scene, this concept elaborated in dialogue by the philosopher Donna Haraway and the anthropologist Annette Singh and other authors, updates the historic system of plantations. Haraway appoints three fundamental elements that characterize the plantation scene. A radical simplification. I'd like to show you the image, but with the elimination of all kinds of players, a radical substitution of whole domains of lives as plants and animals, and a radical break with the place. The two regimes, mineral and plantation, meet in the study territories the form of a logistical extractivist complex that are not merely works of territorial integration, but infrastructure that articulate the drainage of agricultural and mineral commodities. The strait, used here as a metaphor that produces space in a linear and controlled manner, and seen from satellite view, is in opposite to the sinuous metaphor of the river expression of environmental richness and organic production of space. distinct forms of production and imagination of territory. Okay.
Thank you very much for these really impressive and in a certain way beautiful and terrible pictures that you showed. Yeah. So, thank you very much. And now Armando, our closing speech for today. I invite you to also have a short presentation of yourself and then immediately start with your talk.
Okay, thank you very much. I also have a PowerPoint, so let's go. It works. It works. Thank you everyone for being here. I want to thank especially Sebastian Gies and Fernando Resende. Both of them made possible my journey here. And also I want to thank to you because it's been a long day, and I know you are tired. And despite of drinking amazing beer here in the local bars, you are here listening to us. So for me, that's amazing. Well, I am a professor at the Facultad de Filosofía y Letras in Mexico City. I research mainly about literature. But when Fernando invited me to this project, I just said yes. What I'm going to do, I don't know, but I want to participate in this project. So, unfortunately, last year I didn't participate in this amazing trip that they made. But now I am here, and that's great. So I'm going to start with my presentation. Conquistualidad is a new term, so I don't know how to translate it to English. Conquistualidad, the memory of modernizing violence. And I'm going to start with this quote from the book The Pine Island Paradox by Caitlin Dean Moore. You could cut off my hand and I would still alive. You could take out my eyes and I would still alive. Cut off my ears, my nose, cut off my legs and I could still alive. But take away the air and I die. Take away the sun and I die. Take away the plants and the animals and I die. So why would I think my body is more a part of me than the sun and the earth? Okay, I'm going to start. Conquistualidad, the memory of modernizing violence. At the end of June 2024, as part of the first workshop of the project Images of the Invisible Territories, I presented a paper on railway imaginaries in Latin America. In that presentation, I revisit the work of Gustavo Garcia, who points out that imaginaries are a kind of grammar, a referential framework that allow us to interpret reality. They operate as a matrix of meanings that guide the sense attribute to notions of life shared by a society. For Garcia, imaginaries not only appeal to the rationality of communities, but are also strongly emotional and affective, since in addition to helping us understand reality, they produce an emotional reaction in us that largely determines how we value our reality. In that presentation, I briefly reviewed some representations of railways in Latin America. And I emphasize that representations of trains are one link in the chain that constructs railway imaginaries, which in turn are integrated into the broader imaginary of modernization and progress. Just as railway representations do not function in isolation, neither do the imaginaries of which they are part. And to acquire meaning, they must be related to a much broader context of significance, which in Latin America and in much of the world is that one of imaginaries of modernity, or more accurately, of colonial modernity. Large infrastructure projects, succinctly defined by Larkin as matter that enables the movement of other matter, manage and order space in service of a territorialization project. During the 19th century and much of the 20th century, territorialization was geared toward the configuration of Latin American nation states. However, for at least half of a century, infrastructure has aimed at the economic integration of the region, a transnational market through which goods and capital circulate freely, not people. Although it might seem obvious, it is necessary to emphasize that large projects are not built in empty spaces. There are no empty spaces, but rather in sites that have already been territorialized according to logics that predate or run parallel to those of capital. In this sense, all current territorialization implies the displacement of previous ways of inhabiting a space, since infrastructure projects not only profoundly modify it, but also transform the dynamics of all living beings that inhabit that place, which can lead to their displacement to other more habitable sites or to their extinction. My approach to railway imaginaries has been theoretically guided by the colonial thought, initiated by the work of the Peruvian Aníbal Quijano and enriched by the contributions of numerous intellectuals from Latin America and other parts of the world. However, in recent months, I have considered that perhaps coloniality understood as a transhistorical matrix of power based on racialization is insufficient to comprehend the extreme violence employed to impose colonization. Violence that has intensified in recent decades, although its presence in Latin America can be traced back at least to 1492, when the first European invasions caused the extermination of millions of indigenous people in the Caribbean islands. In this sense, it may be necessary to focus not on the matrix of power that structures colonial modernity, but on the predatory violence employed to impose and sustain it. In a 2015 interview, anthropologist Rita Segato began to outline the notion of conquistualidad, a new approach to understanding our present, which she defines as follows. I am referring to a new form of conquest of territories, a plundering of everything without legal limits. An essential characteristic of the conquest was the suspension of the law, of the justice codes of the time, which meant that the crown's existence as a central power became largely fictional. Today, we are in a similar situation due to the ferocity of territorial appropriations, the displacement of people from their living spaces, carried out with extreme brutality. Conquistualidad designates not a matrix of power, but the persistence of violence as the sole language of power. For Segato, foundational violence has not remained in the pre-colonial past. It is constantly updated and deployed throughout history, directed with violence against historically vulnerable groups. Women, indigenous people, ethnic and racial minorities, among others. I now believe that conquistualidad is a key concept for understanding our present, from the femicides in Mexico to the project to flood several towns to expand the Panama Canal, from the bombings of Gaza and Ukraine to the anti-immigrant rates in the United States, from the extermination of native population worldwide to the accelerated and unstoppable destruction of the planet's natural environment. Rita Segato asserts that we live in a world without laws, a world in which respect and value for life, the habitability of the earth, are subordinated to economic gains. For Segato, the planet has returned to functioning feudally. There are owners of the world more powerful than most governments, and on them, since they are almost always men, depends the control over life in all its forms. Faced with this bleak panorama, what can the arts do? What can we do from academia? There are no quick answers to these questions, but rather different positions from which to respond. Just as the construction of the Capricorn Brazil-Chile Biosane corridor brings to the forefront various forms of violence, hidden beneath the imaginaries of progress, it also evokes different modes of resistance and, in doing so, summons artistic practices that, from the present, challenge the progressive timeline of colonial modernity, reactivating events and figures forgotten by history. I am interested now in discussing with you just a couple of projects in which the temporalities of Latin America intertwine in a reiteration, always different, of foundational violence. The New El Dorado. From the early decades of the 16th century, a legend began to spread throughout various parts of what is now South America. A legend that would endure for more than 300 years. The first invaders of present-day Colombia here, or perhaps invented, the fabulous tale of a city built entirely of gold, whose riches were readily available and could be seized effortlessly. Although the origin of this legend is not entirely clear, various studies suggest that it is related to a ritual that took place at Guatavita Lake in Colombia. A Muisca cacique, governor, was covered with gold dust and jewels, traveled on a raft to the lake and offered the jewels and gold from his body to a local god. Apparently, this ritual was indeed performed several times, but by the time the Spanish arrived in the area, it had not been performed for many decades. So the story they were told only fueled the belief. In 2012, Colombian artist Miguel Ángel Rojas presented his work, El Nuevo Dorado, Economía Salvaje, The New El Dorado, Wild Economy, at the 12th Shanghai Biennale. The piece consists of two manipulated satellite photographs. In 2011, the government of Jair Bolsonaro, then president of Brazil, enacted a law allowing a single person to deforest up to 400 hectares of Amazon rainforest, in addition to restricting indigenous territories and protected natural areas. Rojas' work stemmed from the impact this law had on him, as the law, far from protecting the environment, authorized its ultimate destruction. Amazonian lands are first deforested for the value of wooden, then poisoned by open pit mining, or used by drug cartels to cultivate coca. The New El Dorado Wild Economy consists of two satellite photographs in which Rojas uses mambe, dehydrated and grown coca leaves, gold leaves, clay from the South America tropics, and silver leaf to embellish two murals created using silkscreen prints. One image shows satellite photos of the atmospheric effects of climatic change. The other is a satellite image of the Amazon River. depicting its course through a mixture of gold, the old wealth, and coca, the new wealth, revealing a terrible beauty. As Rojal himself explained, the title, The New El Dorado, emphasized the horror of the conquest of the Americas. The Conquest Continues could be a parallel title. The plundering of virgin American territories is not longer carried out by European colonial powers, but by multinational corporations and companies for all kinds. These entities continue the devastation of the territories and the extermination of the native populations. With the New El Dorado savage economy, he demonstrates that the colonialist invasion of territories has never stopped. Only the actors have changed. The destruction of the territory directly affects the indigenous communities of the Amazon, but its effects are felt worldwide. Towards the decolonization of the museum. In early November, the next week.
5 minutes.
Minutes, okay.
4 minutes.
4 minutes, no. Okay, I'm going to talk about this museum founded in 2003. The Calafate Museum is the only museum in all this area. Comprising 5 rooms, the first 3 present a history of the region's geography, plants, and animals. The remaining 2 rooms recount the history of the Aoniken people from the Aoniken people or the Welches. From the oldest remains found to the violence that began with the European invasions and extended into the early decades of 21st century. These 2 rooms, you can see the photographs there, are what unsettle visitors because unlike most museums, the curatorial approach doesn't conform to the triumphal narrative of modernity, but rather to the destruction brought by colonialism and enduring legacy of conquest. In addition to highlighting the brutalities inflicted upon the Patagonian people, genocide, enslavement, ethnocide, the museum maintains a clear gender perspective and, in its final room, presents a significant collection of archives documenting the horrors perpetrated by colonizers against Aoniken women. By one of those fortunate coincidences that occurred while researching, yesterday, Nelson shared a link with us to the documentary Calafate, Human Zoos, directed by Hans Mulchi. I was unfamiliar with the film, and I haven't yet had the chance to watch it, but it connects to one of the points I want to highlight here: the relationship between coloniality and museums, and the urgent need to decolonize them. And to my presentation, this morning, this is another museum, but this morning, while preparing for our meeting, I read some news about what happened in the Alemão and Peña favelas, where more than 120 people died in the largest operation by the Rio de Janeiro security forces. The legality or illegality of these deaths is still to be decided. But what must be said is that it is always people from the same communities who are killed. The precarious bodies sacrificed in a spectacular display of power. What happened in these favelas triggers the memory of what happened in Canudos in the interior of Bahia between 1896 and 1897, and narrated by Euclides da Cunha in the book Os Sertões, a military campaign that ended with the death of more than 25,000 people. For Mario Ruffer, the present is marked by the persistence of coloniality, which manifests itself through anachronism, permanence, and repetition. The linear temporality of colonial modernity is a temporality in which dynamics from another era persist. hidden beneath the image of unstoppable progress. Art questions this linearity by problematizing our relationship with the past. It does so through its works with the collective memory of communities, because, as Sonia Pulido points out, the memory of violence challenges the possibility of conceiving of a progressive time and history. Contemporary violence is not exceptional, and perhaps its causes can be better understood within the long terms. What these works, among many others, propose it is that the history of Latin America is not that of progress, of modernization, but rather that of violence, of conquistualidad. I conclude my presentation by returning to the words of Valeria Añón. Conquistualidad takes up unradicalized coloniality and provides a specific rhetoric and vocabulary to think about the present and to seek to transform it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this very, very enlightening talk. And I think it was, thank you, Fernando, that you put this talk at the end, because it was also kind of helping us maybe to start into not too long discussion, because as you already realized, you were all tired, and we are a little bit tired, and maybe you will maybe short walk to Tübingen just to see a little bit from our university town. I would like to invite you to think for a few minutes alongside and help us to think what happened in your minds, what you will keep from discussion and from the presentations. Maybe we can remind you that the idea of starting with a very concrete thing, like it was not about all the kind of infrastructures, but it was about railways. And railways were chosen not because railways are more important than cars, but because the railways bring us back to the imaginary of modernization, what we know from all films from North America, and all these ideas of settlers going there and then meeting indigenous people. And so we have these these imaginaries of railways, this kind of, on the one hand, modernization, but we know it's also destructive, and we have these ideas, even if we have not learned to see the destruction more than the modernization, in the contrary. So the railways is, maybe you said it's kind of a metaphor. It's as you said, a grammar. Maybe railways are a grammar of imagination, like pipelines, like roads. But we had also, on the other hand, we had rivers that were cut. Not only the kind of idea of the grammar is not only railways and roads, but it's also muddy rivers and dams, and so it's maybe the two layers that we have to think about. And I remember also that very important was, and you started your talk also with a very beautiful example, but we had it in many talks, that we have landscapes and territories as bodies. And this is also something that I remember very well. And if you would say this is something what you can also, what resonates, I'm just taking notes and collecting all your ideas, commentaries and everything.
Ricarda. Yes. I was a little bit sad that I didn't present today. I'm a political scientist. I forgot to present myself also.
Oh, yes.
So I'm exotic here, but it was so insightful. And we are doing a project. We have submitted a bigger proposal on transnational infrastructure and global orders. And what was hilarious, and this is not just anecdotal, but also in conceptual terms, my colleagues from political economy here at Tübingen think of infrastructure as lifelines of society.
Yeah.
Yes.
Social infrastructure that provides this.
Yes.
And my first idea were Las Venas Abiertas. So open plains, very bodily metaphor both. But what is drained, who drains us, is kind of one of the central discussions. And I was wondering also about this bodily dimension where you see that. And the second point is we talk about geopolitics a lot, but what I always stress in this project is that orders are not just imposed and work top down, orders can also be transformed. And this component of resistance. So we have the promises of infrastructure, we have the harms of infrastructure, and what I really stress or try to stress is that infrastructures can be disrupted and used and be blockaded and turned into instruments of resistance. They're also very powerful from top down, but also this bottom up perspective. And came in some talks, I think Christelle was very much on this. Where do you see these kind of mobilizations? And I loved the pictures because we talk a lot about geopolitics and Capricorn and the Bioceanic Highway and the Chinese project. We never see it.
Yeah, invisible.
It's very invisible because
I have a question, I guess. I hope it's a question in the end, not a comment, about those images, and that's why I wanted to intervene just now, because they just stay in my mind. I guess like many of you was like they are beautiful, they are touching, they are moving, and that is also quite problematic in a way because I don't know, it made me think about what it's been called as the toxic sublime. And in my research, I wonder how toxicity can be also beautiful, pollution can be beautiful, but I work with metaphors. And those images are not metaphor. It was sort of, I was just wondering if it's from your perspective, I don't know if we can discuss if it's problematic to produce such beautiful images. What are the challenges? Is it maybe linked to what Christelle was talking about, these contradictions? Because we are looking at ruins, at ecological landscapes in ruins, but there's also some beauty in destruction. And is it the way we see it? I don't know. I was also thinking trains are sort of beautiful for some people, or maybe in the past as well. So there's a dimension that brings some challenges to think about this as just purely destructive images. Yeah, so like it's not a question, I guess. I just want to know your thoughts. That's my question.
So this image you just have to look on the Google Earth and Google Street View and to choose, and to cut, and that's all. So it's really incredible and beautiful, but it's not it's a contradiction, but that's it. That's not, so I'm not interested in to show beautiful things, but just to have a cut of that so I choose and to have a cut of this violent thing, and yes, that's a contradiction, but that's it. And I'm not sure if it's a kind of sublime image. Or perhaps the new sublime, I don't know. But I wouldn't like to define this.
Okay, gleich dazu?
Yeah.
Kannst du kurz warten?
I don't know if people online, are there people online?
You have people.
Oh, Sarah, are you there?
I had the same question that Anna had 2 days ago at the Brazil Center anniversary, and asked a biologist, what do you do? Because he works on lithium. And I am hesitant to show lithium mines because they look beautiful. When you have open pit coal mines, it's destructive here from Germany and Colombia. And he said, put it in numbers. And I think that's tricky. Put it in numbers and put it into scale. And he said, I think it was 15,000 liters of water in Atacama evaporate. That is Berlin whole water consumed in 1 year in a place where there's water scarcity. And I like this way of contextualizing, and maybe this is where natural science can be helpful sometimes. Very much.
Sebastian, yeah. Toxic beauty would be a super title for a workshop. Beauty of toxic beauty. Yeah.
I was wondering about your the dimension of ruinification and this temporal dialectics that you pointed to, and it reminded me of Albert Speer and his ruin value theory. Fascism had this idea, or fascist architecture had this idea, that you have to construct infrastructure buildings thinking about the process of ruinification and how they would impact people 1,000 years from now. So if you somehow translate that to the images of these mines that we can only perceive by using satellite infrastructure, another type of conquistualidad, no? La conquistualidad del espacio. So we are kind of partaking in this extractivist dimension of mapping the world, trying to behold of the destruction that mining companies produce. And maybe what these images tell us is that the people who organize the mines are conscious of the lasting process of ruinification that they are producing on landscape. So, it is a bit short-circuiting fascism and mining, but there could be a common element in that.
Did you?
Oh, you can say it. Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you all very much, and also for the first panel. And I wanted to go back to Christelle's talk and to thank you very much. It was a very moving talk, also bodily, physically, emotionally, for all of us, I guess, at least for me too. And I perceive your talk and your writing as what some activists and scholars call counter-anthropological, because you are reclaiming this talk which was denied during centuries, but which has been existing, of course, since 1492, and you are making this counter-analysis of the Western white world. And I think that this is particularly important to take this talk, these words, into account in every analysis and in every project today. So I don't know much what to say, but just thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. And I definitely hope that your article will be published, and I want to quote it, I think, in my PhD, because it needs visibility, it needs recognition everywhere. So thanks a lot.
And thank you, Sylvain, for reminding us that we are here for networking, and also referring to everyone's work and everyone's ideas. And this is also kind of academic action. What we can do is also networking, knowing about each other. Not everyone is capable of I don't know, ruining infrastructures or doing things like that, but it's also part of having a louder voice by referring to each other in such kind of networks. Thank you, and thank you. Sure. Yeah, your comments.
I don't know if I'm getting anywhere with the with the observation, but I would like to know why you didn't pick up Madeira Mamoré railway, because it was pretty much for me the beginning of the invasion with the railways in South America. It's pretty for me is the beginning of the planning. When you pick the planning of the Brazil Railway company, you pick Madeira Mamoré is pretty much the first one, and it has a chaotic relationship between the environment and the railway, and a lot of histories and legends and fear, and almost creates this idea of the green hell and people dying of malaria and everything. Creates this paranoia in Europe around the Amazon. I don't know why. And the second thing is like when the railways come, they come washing everything and washing, creating the idea of the void that doesn't exist. But it's not only an invasion of economics, but an invasion of education. Education to a wide case that erases all other kinds of thinking and ontologies and epistemologies. And how do we get these epistemologies and ontologies back to our analysis of the ruins? I think for me, it's like one thing that I was thinking this before coming here, actually. Like, how do we get this into methodology, and how are we capable of doing this in the field and recovering this?
First question goes to Vilma Fernando. Second question goes to everyone.
Oh, we do that? Yeah. No, first of all, this because I have other topics here that I think it's nice also to bring to the conversation. So first of all, this issue about the Madeira Mamoré, it's sometimes when we do this type of work, we get what is possible and what is there. Of course, as I try to say, this is a multi-geographical problem. It goes from here and there, and there are many other things we did not get. That's the only point. I mean, we can't get it all. So we kind of select what is possible and what is corresponding to what we are interested at that moment. I'm sure that with Madeira Mamoré, this would be another topic, another conversation, another way of looking at the problem we're saying. It's just, I don't know if I answer your question, Priscilla, but
yes,
it's like because it's impossible to pick everything there is in such a problem, right? It's so vast. There are so many things to look at. And first of all, when we thought about this project, we must say that Nelson and I, when we started thinking about what could we work with once we had a project that had to include Brazil and Chile, we had that line of the Bioceanic as the point. I mean, in our mind, I think I can say this, and also sharing with Dorothée, we thought that was the line we would look at. But what happened is when we started doing this, and when we went to Antofagasta, we saw that thing spread all over. So I think this is the point here. I mean, this is really just a project that is beginning. What we're doing here is giving impressions of what we could get from this project that was a very little thing in the perspective of what it means, right? I think this is important. Well, perhaps the other people could ask about the epistemology. I think this is a huge question. And I don't think that decolonial epistemology itself alone resolves things. I think that's not the point. For me, it's questions we make, the type of questions we make, how we look at things, and how we project what that could be or could have been if. So we kind of work from backwards, trying to unwrap what is put as normal, what is put as natural, what is considered as legitimate, for example. So we kind of break this legitimacies, trying to disrupt the thought. I don't think there is a methodology really. I don't think there is an epistemology, because I think if we do it this way, we're going to do the same thing we're criticizing. That's the point, I think. So we would just go the other way around to do the same. So I think our challenge is much deeper than just building another way of, an opposite thing. I don't know, that's my impression.
Anyone who wants to add something? Yeah, we're looking around, yeah,
Yeah, maybe to go in what you said and agreeing with what you just said, but I'm trained in philosophy, sorry, so maybe just to nonetheless talk about the epistemology. I think that we really should go in the direction that Christelle also did, which is recognizing contradictions, in fact, and the multiple, not single, but multiple cosmo-epistemologies, I would say, which include all the contradictions and embrace these contradictions instead of trying to negate them or to overcome them, which is 1,000 years history since Aristotle, principle of non-contradiction, or Hegel, who wanted to overcome every contradiction. And we just have to get rid of that on the logical level, I mean. And of course, we have to do many practical political projects and not the logical, but on the logical side, I think that this is fundamental to embrace contradictions and to accept them in a way, which doesn't mean that we don't have to fight against problematic projects, for example, but to recognize, what Christelle described, like our own contradictions and the contradictions of every people's, every communities. So, yeah.
Don't forget the epistemologies of art, of poems, of literature, and that's what is very. So I was very happy that many of you were citing lyrics and poetries and things like that, because we have the division between kind of philosophy and logic on the one hand, and on the other hand we have art, and then we have these literary studies, which is something which is also kind of treating poems in a rational way, so which is really one of the biggest contradictions what we produce ourselves, and we think that this is a very university discipline, which is not, and this is, I think it's quite interesting to see how every one of in your papers, nearly everyone, took integrated in this kind of poetic or literary imaginary, the logic of imaginary. So this is something which is not contradictory, I would say, but we perceive it as something which could be, which should be contradictory. But I think we have to unlearn. The first thing what we have to do is to unlearn this kind of what we call contradictory. And I would even push it a little bit further, because these kind of contradiction are maybe in our world here in Tübingen, in little Tübingen is contradiction, but in the whole, in very different kind of cosmologies or kind of epistemologies or whatever, or even ontologies or anything, it's less contradictory than we presume it to be. So I was extremely thankful also for your kind of methodology for implementing these kind of artworks and architecture, poems and songs even. I would love to have your poem. I before you run out of the room, you have to give me your super beautiful poem. Yeah, so thank you very much for we are nearly at an end. If any one of you has
I just wanted to thank you, all of you, and of course, Sylvan, for your words and for everything. Yeah, really, it's a really your presentations gave me actually more thought about this idea. I was just thinking, and I wanted to share that with you, that this idea of contradiction or to begin with two is just the beginning, right? Because I mean, my suggestion was to think about not just the contrast or the opposite, but also the complementarity in that. And this idea of the two as the minimum is really also important, because I mean, we are here dealing with a complexity of things. I mean, when I was watching admiring your photo, your pictures, I was also like thinking about the similarity, which I don't know if you know this archaeological work, also like trying to what is it, to reconstruct what was at least in the Maya region, how was the past, right? And you also people are also using like new technology to treat both the currently forest or the currently earth and things what it was before, right? And we are like discovering that in a way we are like living also like, I mean, it's always there, no? Of this idea of overlapping territories as well, and to imagine the dimension of the multi dimensionality of the thing, not just like in a temporal way that we are like intentional working with or speaking about the temporality, but also territories or space in a. I mean, for us also for the Maya philosophy is or thought is like. Yeah, we are speaking always or dealing with dimensions, with steps, with scales, exactly. Not just upon, above, but right, left. I mean, it's really a lot to think about, and I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Nelson.
Yeah, as a short statement, checking the reaction about the greens and the greenification. The matter is about precisely the beauty of the horror. You know? The things that if we here in this room, people around humanities and social science, we have a very big problem. That is, what is the scale of the problem? The corridor of Cancer tropic was solved in 16th century, 15th century. No? The connection is Mexico, precisely, Veracruz and Acapulco. But this is the global north, if you want, is the part of the globe in which there is a bigger part of the humanity. But in the south hemisphere, the engineering had a problem. And this is the Capricorn corridor. Then we are precisely in the 14th century, in our century, 21st, looking for the next century. Can you understand me? That we are in the future, not in the past. We are looking for the connection between South America and Africa in this latitude. And this implies that what kind of exhausting sources we are going on to coming for the next generations. The problem of the academic thinking about the capitalism or the extinction of the capitalism is part of our problem. We need to think in this landscape with other dimension, precisely this, because it's the conception of the progress. No, when the fascist probably was thinking about the ruins for the future, was thinking about Acropolis. What kind of monumental buildings we are leaving for the next generation? What kind of admiration we are giving for our construction nowadays? But we need to change or switch the kind of economy because the classical economy is connected with the horror and the beauty of the destruction, but we need to change to ecological economy in which we are thinking about the metabolism and how this process is going on. Then finally, is about the matter of railways. Railways implies to think about the scale. The thing is how the engineering are thinking about the just-in-time, how to be more efficient and connect ships and railways. That was the project in the 19th century, published in the Journal of Engineering in British every Friday in London for the 5 continents. And the promise was Valparaiso and Buenos Aires could reduce 2 weeks of navigation to 5 days. That was the thinking of 19th century, and we are precisely in the same situation nowadays.
No, I don't know if there's time for a last intervention. If there's time for a last intervention. Yeah, I just want to also say that it was really interesting for me to listen to all of you. I think that what I'm bringing with me after, as you also said, what you can bring from this after you went here like 4 hours, I think, or 3 hours, I don't know how long we were together. But I think that I have the methodology of geopolitics from Fernando, and the idea of tecnoterritorio, also the conquistadoralidad from Rita Segato. Sorry, but you can do a little bit that, the reunification, all the images from Google, that maybe I have a different perspective with Anna, because I think that the subjectivity of how we find or we discover what is beautiful, or this idea of the beauty of in the horror, it's just like something subjective. But I know, and I think that something that it was really interesting in my case from Christelle, I really love your presentation, because I think that, I don't know, but I already knew that you went in the train, Maya. Before you went to Mexico, you said, Valeria, I'm never going to be there. It's like something that I'm never going to do. And after that, she sent me a video just like, I'm doing my homework. And it was just like, okay. And after the presentation of today, I think that most of the embrace the contradiction is how our bodies, with not just a conscious of the unification of how if we are just respiring all the atmosphere on the carbon, but how we can also deal. I just want to share that, I think Ricardo already knows, but in Ecuador, the last 3 weeks, there's a huge national strike because the new president is trying to change the constitution, the whole indigenous movement was there, a lot of feminists are there, but just like Christelle said, it's not just like their problem. And also here, I think Sebastian last Wednesday told us like this conflict with the AfD and the gender studies, and also like all the things that are happening in our world. But I think that maybe the connection between how we can be related, not just here, but how this embraces contradiction, but also the sensitivity to walk and maybe doing something, like not became always an activist, like, but just the images from Google that you show us, like there was never a human being, like, and it's not something like it's like so interesting. That's something that I have from today, and thank you very much for all this space. And it was really
Thank you very much. This is a fantastic closing.
Thank you.
I thank you so much.
Tonight we have the film made by Priscila Brasil that's going to be exhibited here at the College of Fellows. It's on the Amazon. It's a very interesting film. We invited you all. I know we are all tired, but it's a nice film, and we're going to have a talk afterwards with that.
If I may just make another announcement, tomorrow we have another panel in presence here for those who want. In the afternoon in the seminar room where we were before at 3:30 p.m. Recreating Realities, Critical Praxis in Precarious Times. And I will moderate the panel, so please come if you can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothée.
And thank you for your support.
Thank you.